Alright chaps, last drive and Algernon for me. Next place you'll see this is being loaded onto a truck. Well, probably I won't get footage of that. And you'll see it at Peter's end. Still runs and drives lovely. But remember, this car is named Algernon because it's green. And my sister named it and I always thought that name was appropriate, so Howdy chaps, and welcome back to another fantastic episode. On this one we're going to be tinkering with this new freshly rebuilt clevo, and we'll probably try to put it back together a little bit, clean the block and paint it and mask it up and possibly drop in the crank and a few things. It's a bit of a all over the shops episode today. I'm a little bit out of it. I've literally just got back from dropping off the Corolla for Peter Anderson, because that's at the transport depot right now, so he should see that. This being Monday, he should see that midweek to end of the week. Probably, I reckon he'll probably see it this week, because they were talking they might load it today, so I'm like, and Melbourne to Adelaide is not exactly a far distance. You can easily drive it in a day, so yeah, so he should see that relatively soon. Another bit of news, I actually had a very lovely and very long conversation with Jamie from Custom Garage the other day. I got a little bit starstruck because I found out he watches my ramblings. I'm like, oh. Which, it was a nice feeling, and we had a very good chat. We were talking about the pieces that he makes and the stuff that's you know, potentially doable. I will be sending him the XC remnants of this parcel shelf, because he wants the stuff to be able to offer, because he originally designed the replacement parcel shelf off an XA one, and I believe it didn't have the boot light, and since doing research I found that partway through XA the boot light hole did arrive. It wasn't there in the beginning, because I believe it was down by the switch underneath the side, or potentially, no, I'm pretty sure it was under the boot on the right hand side, but I can't be too sure. I haven't seen too many really early XA coupes, but I know the hole wasn't there. And then later XAs, which I do know because I had a 73 XA and I know a couple other people with them, that the boot light hole is there, so it must have been added in partway through XA. And then what I found while doing this XC, that when Ford introduced the XC, they put in baby seat bolts, which I knew because the holes are there in XAs, Bs, but on XCs they're actually got a plate with a nut welded to the bottom of them, and the one in the center is actually further back and intersects with that lower panel, and Ford have put a little notch and recess in there to account for the baby seat bolt. So it's another, just a little modification that Ford did, and I'm going to send him that parcel shelf remnant so he can use it to copy and be able to offer a parcel shelf to suit XCs, because he was very keen on knowing how he could make his product better. I said, dude, there is not much you can do to make them better. About the only thing you can do is offer this one as an XC one, because it's got the little recess to go around the baby seat bolt. Otherwise you'll be cutting out your bolt and shifting it forward, whereas if you can do this, you can just slot one in that'll go around it. So he's pretty keen on that. I'm sending him I think I'm sending him the old topper, outer panel. He doesn't need too many coupe parts to work on because he's got a few, but we talked about the upper deck panel that he reworked, and I said how really awesome that was, about if we could get him to rework the actual channel where the rubber seal sits. That's about all that needs. So I'm going to, on this one, when I get back into that, I'm going to shape up a piece of steel that happens to be the same profile as the rest of the boot channel, and I'm going to take that roundness out of it and put the square edges in it, and he reckons he could potentially do that to them to when he reworks the rear spares piece, rework the gutter channel, because I mean he's done the top and it looks fantastic and fits primo. But if we can rework the channel so that looks spot on, and that's all we're going to do. So he's going to look into that as well. So it's good to be able to help everyone else with the reworking of these panels and potentially make better stuff. We also discussed the new Coupe door skins. Now I would love for somehow to get my hands onto a pair. Apparently they were $1,500 a pair, and then apparently there was a bit of a disagreement with something in the people making it to the people selling it, and then suddenly they're $2,000 a pair. Me and Jamie discussed how, and I've been sent quite a few detailed photos, and a few things have popped up that the new door skins possibly may not be fantastic, but I would very much like to get my hands onto a pair and do a really good product review, because we suspect that the lower style line is way too sharp, and I could tell just from the photos that you are going to have a hard time putting your door handles in. So I know a couple of people who have new old stock door skins, so I was thinking if I could get someone to lend me a new old stock door skin, I won't fit it, but if I could get one borrowed and borrow one of these reproduction door skins, I could do them a side-by-side review of them and show you just how much work they'll probably require to make them fit, just so that you guys have a heads up if you decide to go down the path of what you might actually be into. I know a few mobs have fit, well apparently one mob fitted them and said they were good, but you know, they're trying to sell them, so of course they're going to say they're good. So I'd like to have one and do a bit of an independent review and tell you just how good they really are. So if somebody has some they want to lend them, or even if they was going to sell me them cheap, but I mean at $1,000 a skin, I really think that's pushing the friendship of what it would be really worth. But I need to see one to make my final judgment. They might be better than I thought, but I've seen some pretty detailed photos and I'm a little questionable, so I need to see one to be able to do a judgment. But I'd love to do a proper in-depth product review and compare it to a new old stock door skin with a reproduction one and see which one you're better off with and how much work they require, because no reproduction part is spot on. I mean, or I should rephrase that, going, there's very few reproduction panels that are actually any good, well, that are direct drop in. So Jamie from Custom Garage, he makes the parcel shelf sections and he is fantastic. His work is it's just astronomically good. And there's another lovely chap, he runs a shop called Better Than Your Old Stock, and his stuff is freaking fantastic. But these are people who really love the cars, which is why their parts are just so much better than some of these other companies that I shall not mention. But you know, it is what it is. So I really would love to get to the point, because I do fit a lot of these panels, I'd love to get to the point where I can review a new panel when it comes out and walk you through what is required to make them fit, because that would be really cool. I'm also sending Jamie the dog legs for my EJ, because they're a rare spares piece, and I've seen what he can do with a rare spares piece, because it's like a good starting point, but they need a lot more work. But he's got the tools and equipment that could make them a lot better. So I'm sending him the remnants of an original dog leg plus these rare spares pieces, and I'm gonna see what he can do with them to make them actually have a fighting chance of fitting, because I have a suspicion he might be able to do it. We also discussed Coupe roof skins in length. They are in fact doable, but you may want to be sitting down when you get the price tag, because if you think about the hours involved in making some of this stuff, you just wouldn't be able to believe it. But we were talking about if we could get enough people together, and if there was enough of a demand, he could make a buck and start potentially making a few of them. But the problem is the first one's going to be really expensive to do. So at this point in time, for this particular coupe with its holes in the roof, we were discussing options, because Jamie does sell what he calls just shoulders, which should be, if you imagine a coupe with a vinyl roof, you've got the two seams, pretty much from those seams to the sides. He makes and can do you the sides, which is the lip and the gutters and around where the roof and the quarter panel meet. He can make you the shoulders, and he can do the gutters and things like that. So we discussed that potentially an option would be to sacrifice a sedan roof somewhere, if I can find one, and use the sedan roof for the dead center, and then put the coupe shoulders on it, and then drop it on the cat. So there's that. That might be the way to go with this one. But if we got enough people together and who were willing to put in a bit of coin, we could get coupe roofs made, but it would require some financial assistance. I almost contemplated myself, but I'm like, I don't know if I want to fund that all for myself. But to the people out there who are panicking about roof skins, it is possible, but it would require some doing. Because you got to remember, you got to pay this lovely chap to do it, because he's pretty talented, and it's not a 5-minute task to make a roof skin from scratch, but it is potentially doable. He has looked into it, but it's quite extremely time consuming. So yeah, we're gonna keep having chatting in the future and whatnot, and see what fantastic things we can do. I need to actually start contacting some of these other panel mobs, including there's a chap who runs a Facebook page called Bare Metal Restos. I think he makes some of the, it could be him or the patch maker, one of the two. There is a couple of different mobs who are very talented and can make the little individual panels. I think Bare Metal Restos, I think he's the chap who can make the I guess you could call it the triangle piece that goes between, if you got the profile of the lower rear quarter, you've got your inner one that's flat, and you've got your outer quarter skin, but there's a little filler panel which is effectively the rear section of the outer wheel tub that goes down in there, and then nearly always rust away. I believe he can make you the rear lower section, and potentially the front for a coupe. So I'd like to get a pair of those and do a little bit of a review on those. I'm actually surprised that Howard Assel hasn't actually got those in his parts list, because I think the rearmost section, which is the filler panels for the outer edge of the beaver panel, I believe those are from that same chap. So not really sure, but it's been a very interesting couple of days, and I'd very much like to be the chap who reviews fitting these parts, because I do work on coupes an awful lot. I've fitted so many of these parts, and that's one thing that Jamie said he was happy to receive, was almost a review, because he as much as he makes these parts, he doesn't fit them, or he hasn't. I think he said he may not have even fitted one, but he's trial fitted them into his coupe and stuff like that, so he knows they fit, and I can tell you they fit, but he's never seen a bit of an in-depth review of fitting one and what you have to walk through and do, and that's why I wanted to help him. And I still can't believe he watches me in my ramblings, which is kind of crazy, really. So if you sat through this much gibberish right now, we will get stuck into this motor and get it done. So chaps, if you got through all my ramblings and you got to this point, congratulations. You're a true fan. But let's unwrap this motor. Get off. Yeah, filthy scoundrel. Because the first port of call is to clean it. And I learnt from not only Peter Anderson, because he's actually the person I watched initially to learn how to build an engine. So if actually you want a super duper in-depth, extremely detailed look at building a 351 Cleveland, I would suggest you go watch his ones on building an engine. So, and I had to copy that, so we got to clean this thoroughly. It's got oil on it, and it's got machining grit and junk in it, and I know from past experiences that all the galleries will be chockers full of just yuck, basically. It's all got to come out, and these cylinders are got to be absolutely spotless. Got some CRC to coat them once we've cleaned them so they don't go rusty again, but we need to get all the internals of the block spotless. And then what we'll do is, once I've got it clean, I'll mask it up and paint the block like I did my last one, and we'll get the crank with its bearings sitting in, and we'll clearance them with the plastic gauge and make sure they're all primo, and probably put in all the oil gallery plugs, which, interesting, are still in. Some of them are in and some of them are not. So probably the first thing we might do is actually pull them out, because I would have thought they would have been pulled out. Interesting. Or should I say, I would have left them out until the block was clean. So I think what we'll do is pluck them in a minute, and then we'll wheel it over there and get it cleaned up. Is it wash plugs out? Yep. Cool. I noticed this one's got some rough casting marks on it and stuff. I'll actually make sure I take a couple of photos of the date this block is made, because somebody asked me about what date this block is, because I think he was looking at Landau codes. So I'll do that in a second. And yeah, you can see all the rough casting, still some of the sand I imagine is still on the block. Anyway, I'll get the plugs out and I'll take some photos for the chap, and then we can get it cleaned. Righty chaps, I may have underestimated how excessively long it takes to clean the block and mask it up. So it's masked up there. I'm going to paint it now. It is actually an incredibly important stage to actually clean the block thoroughly. It's got a little really razor sharp bit poking off the side there. We were looking at the date codes on this thing too. We worked out that this is a 72 block, and it doesn't have Geelong Foundry on the top of it, so this is a cast in America block. But it would make sense because this Cleveland is out of my brother's Landau, and it's a early 73, and he said he knows the codes better than I, and he said the block was about a year old before it even made it into the car, which is kind of cool. But now I'm just going to paint it. I've cleaned it thoroughly. It's a bit of fluff. Taped up everything that I need to tape up. No emphasis can describe how important it is to clean the block of all the machining junk out of it, especially a lot comes out of here. And the cylinders, you can wipe them like 6 times with a white rag, keep getting stuff out of them. So I've cleaned them and I've just recoated them with CRC. And I think all I can get done in this video, because it's going to be excessively long at this rate, and probably not my best one out there, but we can get the block cleaned, painted and ready to be assembled. So I'm going to paint this and then catch up in a second. Righty chaps, she's blue. Today's episode is not going to be my greatest, I'll give you that, but if you were interested in all my ramblings about Coupe related parts and things, you know, I hope you enjoyed that. Oh, I forgot to unmask the oil doodad, but everything else is unmasked, and I've just given the whole thing, oops, a bit of water dribbling off. I've given the whole thing a coat of CRC just to you know, give it a fighting chance of not surface rusting within 10 seconds. So most of that shine is actually CRC. So yeah, next thing we're going to do on this engine will be clearancing the crank and putting the crank and pistons in, but unfortunately that's not the next video. The next video will be part 3 on the puzzle shelf for the coupe. So if you got through this video, it won't be the most entertaining. I'll catch you on the next one.